Labour brands the Prime Minister corrupt as Boris Johnson visits a temple in London. Sir Keir Starmer attacks his attempts to change the rules to protect a Tory MP.
That is corrupt, it is contemptible, and it's not a one-off. This Prime Minister has four...
Also ahead, the youngest victim of the Texas concert crush is named as investigations into the cause continue. Fresh calls for more people to get their COVID booster jab to avoid a crisis over Christmas. And
this is ITV News with Gamal Fahnbulleh.
good evening. A pattern of corrupt and contemptible behaviour was the allegation made by the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer against the Prime Minister today, as accusations of sleaze continue to engulf his government. Boris Johnson was said to be trashing Britain's reputation for upholding democratic standards by his attempts to protect former Conservative Minister Owen Paterson, who was found to have broken lobbying rules. He's since stepped down as an MP, but as our political correspondent Carl Dinnan reports, there is growing frustration and anger within the Conservative Party's own ranks.
At the Neaston Temple in London, the Prime Minister and Home Secretary marked Diwali, the Festival of Lights. But across town, the festival of recrimination continued over his botched attempt to change the common standards system. Keir Starmer describing it in the strongest terms.
Along comes the Prime Minister. Instead of upholding standards, he orders his MPs to protect his mate and rip up the whole system. Now, that is corrupt, it is contemptible, and it's not a one-off. This Prime Minister has form, he has pattern.
Many Conservative MPs are also furious about being ordered to vote against their better judgment to block the suspension of Owen Paterson for lobbying.
The ayes to the right, 250. The noes to the left, 232.
The government now admits this was a mistake.
With hindsight, the motion that we brought forward caused some controversy. With hindsight, we wouldn't have brought that forward. That's why we decided to withdraw it. But behind that was a very important principle, which was having an appeals process, having due process in these issues. In most other walks of life, if a decision's taken that people feel aggrieved by, they have a right of appeal.
MPs may still consider some kind of appeals process. But once a perception of sleaze takes hold, people look for other examples. Today, the Sunday Times said 15 out of the last 16 Tory party treasurers, who'd all donated more than £3 million to the party, were then given seats in the House of Lords. The Conservatives say they were ennobled for their philanthropy, not their donations. But the unforced error has cost the Prime Minister considerable political capital within his parliamentary party, and also has the potential to damage the Conservatives at the ballot box.
And Carl is here. There is an emergency debate tomorrow. Are we likely to see more anger from Tory MPs?
Well, I think that's the question they'll be asking themselves in number 10 tonight, because tomorrow afternoon the opposition parties will, of course, try to inflict as much pain and embarrassment on the government as they possibly can. But what will be interesting to see is how many Conservatives stand up to speak on either side of the debate, quite frankly. My sense is that a great many Conservatives will suddenly find they've got some very pressing business to attend to elsewhere tomorrow afternoon. A lot of them, even the angry ones, want to keep this private. But longer term, the problem for the government is one of party management. They've asked people, in fact, they've ordered people to vote for something many of them thought was a very bad idea before then scrapping it. And quite frankly, they will find it harder to ask them to vote for things they don't like in the future. OK, Carl, thank you. The youngest victim of the crush at the Texas Music Festival has been named tonight as a 14-year-old with a love for baseball. John Hilgert was one of 8 killed at the event, organised by the American rap star Travis Scott. Police in Houston are investigating a theory that someone injecting drugs at random may have caused the deadly surge. A warning Robert Moore's report contains images some may find disturbing.
As the investigation gathers pace into the deadly crush on Friday night, new video has emerged of how it all began. Those at the front of the crowd were being pushed up against this security barrier at the very start of the show by the rapper Travis Scott. Some were hauled out to safety. And as the singer himself became aware of the situation,
we need somebody to help him. Somebody passed out right here.
He called for organisers to help.
Security, somebody help, jump in real quick, keep going.
For many concert goers, it wasn't enough.
That's okay with you real quick.
Some concert goers climbed scaffolding to implore one of the festival's cameramen to intervene and stop the concert. Travis Scott has now spoken of his horror at what happened, saying he didn't grasp at the time the scale of what was occurring underneath his elevated stage.
My fans really mean the world to me, and I always just really want to leave them with a positive experience. And anytime I can make out, anything that's going on, I just stop the show and, help them get the help they need.
Investigators are now looking at a bizarre new theory, that the chaos was triggered or compounded by someone injecting and incapacitating people in the crowd.
We do have a report of a security officer, according to the medical staff that was out and treated him last night, that he was reaching over to restrain or grab a citizen, and he felt a prick in his neck. When he was examined, he went unconscious.
Those who died on Friday night ranged in age from 14 to 27. The youngest was John Hilgert, his friends posting this video of him practicing baseball, the sport that was his great love. His coaches saying he had an impact on everyone he met. Among the other victims was Franco Patino, a 21-year-old engineering student, and Brianna Rodriguez, just 16, and with a passion for dancing. The entire Astroworld Festival has now been cancelled, as people light candles and lay flowers to remember those who lost their lives here. Robert Moore, ITV News, in the United States.
Troops have been deployed onto the streets of the Iraqi capital, Baghdad, after an attempted assassination against the country's prime minister. A drone laden with explosives struck his home inside the high-security green zone. He escaped unhurt. Ireland's foreign minister says he believes the British government is preparing to suspend parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's part of the Brexit deal that keeps Northern Ireland in the single market for goods and prevents a hard border on the island of Ireland. And Police Scotland have praised the behaviour of the majority of climate protesters during the COP26 conference in Glasgow. Fewer than 50 arrests have been made since the summit started last weekend. The Health Secretary has warned that COVID restrictions may have to be reimposed unless more people take up their third vaccine dose or booster jab. Today, the UK surpassed 10 million people having taken up the offer, but 40% of those eligible to receive one are yet to do so. Lewis Warner reports on Sajid Javid's warning.
Christmas is getting closer, and with it, the worry. Will we be able to celebrate as normal? The Health Secretary says avoiding restrictions over the festive period depends on the elderly and vulnerable getting their booster jabs.
I think anything that encourages people to go and get the vaccine is a very good thing. I can't understand anybody that doesn't want it.
From tomorrow, this pharmacy in Edgware will be taking advanced bookings. Those in England will be able to secure a slot 5 months after their second dose, but will still have to wait 6 months before getting it.
It's been crazy that you had to wait for the full 6 months and then hang around for a couple of weeks thereafter before you can actually get it.
If we can have it book it earlier so that you know you've got it, then I suppose that would be better.
When I went in, it wouldn't let me enter anything until exactly 6 months, and of course it's now later than 6 months.
So far, more than 10 million people in the UK have received a top-up, but in England, around 30% of over 80s and 40% of over 50s still haven't.
On average, we're delivering 200 vaccinations a day. We have the capacity at this pharmacy to do 300, and I think that is where people who are over 5 months should have the ability to walk in.
While 2 doses does give a high level of protection, immunity starts to wane over time.
And there's fears even the slightest drop in protection could put extra pressure on the NHS this winter. Infection data seems to show cases are levelling off, with warm words coming from scientific advisors.
We're all beginning to be cautiously optimistic. At least it's not, going up and up. Whereas if you'd asked me that question 2 or 3 weeks ago, I'd have been expressing that anxiety that we were seeing a kind of doubling time around every 5 weeks, and things have at least plateaued.
This time last year, a lockdown was supposed to be Santa's saviour. But this year we're told it's the booster jab that's the route to the best present many could wish for. Lewis Warner, ITV News.
Lewis Hamilton's hopes of retaining his F1 World Drivers' title suffered a blow in the Mexican Grand Prix. Despite starting on the front row of the grid, Hamilton was overtaken at the start by his title rival Max Verstappen. He went on to win his 9th race this season. Verstappen finished 16 seconds in front, with Hamilton taking second place. The Dutchman now leads the overall standings by 19 points. And finally, Liverpool's aura of invincibility slipped a little today as they lost their first game since April. Their 3-2 loss to West Ham was their first of the Premier League season, and it means they dropped below the Hammers into 4th. Chris Scudder was watching.
No team had burst Liverpool's bubble this season, but West Ham were flying high, reaching for the sky. Far better than Liverpool keeper Alisson.
Fornals bends this one across. Oh, it's gone right in!
The Brazilian's reach was breached, an own goal after 3 minutes. Sometimes those dreams just fade and die. Liverpool hadn't lost for 25 games and hit back with a beauty. A fabulous free kick from England's Trent Alexander-Arnold, 1-1. But they were creaking at the back and the Hammers cut them apart.
2-1 and West Ham retake the lead.
2 became 3 with Alisson floundering again under aerial assault. After 7 months unbeaten, Liverpool snatched one back late on, but it wasn't enough. A famous win for West Ham, who were flying so high, they're now in the top 3. Chris Scudder, ITV News.
And that's it. The weather is next, but from everyone on the weekend team, bye-bye for now. Bye.